Hi, this is Tara. Welcome to Sky Gazing. Today we are studying Sutra number 10 of the Sadhana Pada. Let's look at what it says. Te prati-prasava-heyāḥ sūkṣmāḥ. Te, these prati with regards to prasava means begetting. Heyāḥ is to overcome. Prati-prasava-heyāḥ means involution. That is also a reversal to the cause, a reversal into that which begat it. Okay, and sūkṣmāḥ is subtle. Maharishi Ved Vyasa explains it as these, when but potential, are destroyed along with the passing out of activity. So when he says these five afflictions, when their power has been burnt up, they disappear along with the yogi's mind. They disappear back into the cause when having fulfilled the purpose of their existence. Swami Satyananda says these kleshas are reducible by involution when they are subtle. So as he explained in Sutra number 9, the process of involution is the opposite of the process of evolution. So it starts with abhinivesha. Abhinivesha goes back into dvesha, dvesha goes into raga, raga goes into asmita, asmita goes into avidya, vidya disappears into vidya. So this is the way to reverse these afflictions. Swami Vivekananda says they to be rejected by opposite modifications are fine. Fine over here means subtle. So how are samskaras to be controlled? We have to begin with the big waves and come down and down. The samskaras are the subtle layer. They live in the unconscious. You cannot start by uprooting from the unconscious. You have to start from the gross, from the apparent, from the visible, from the evident. So the example he gives is, say a mother is angry at her husband, and then the child comes into the room. So the mother will turn to the child with a kiss, and the wave of anger that she felt towards the husband will recede due to the rising wave of love for the child. So the way to counter it is by creating an opposing wave. So he says that we have seen now that all these instinctive actions first begin as conscious actions, become finer and finer. So if good waves in the conscious chitta be constantly raised, they will go down and be subtle and oppose the samskara forms of evil thoughts. BKS Iyengar says subtle afflictions are to be minimized and eradicated by a process of involution. So afflictions may be gross or subtle, both must be contracted and eliminated. So BKS Iyengar is pointing out whether gross or subtle, whether good or bad, everything must be contracted and eliminated, silenced at its very source. So the five afflictions, ignorance, egoism, lust, malice, attachment to life, appear gross on the surface, but the subtle nature may either be dormant or highly active, or maybe alternating between the two. So meditation is what helps eradicate them, which is the next sutra, meditation. The subtle afflictions begin with attachment to life and move in a reverse order, contrary to spiritual evolution, and end with gross afflictions or ignorance. Subtle afflictions should be overcome before they lead to worse trouble. How does one overcome them? If a seed becomes parched, it cannot germinate, so one must render an affliction sterile by tracing it back to its source. That is why the process of involution is very important. The father of subtle afflictions is the mind, whose movement should be directed towards the seer by the yogic process of involution. Osho says, if you make a house on the sand, you will always be afraid. Rock is not there in its foundation, storms come, it will tremble, and the ego is a house of playing cards. He says, if you really know who you are, the fear disappears because now you're on the rock of the infinite, the deathless. The ego is going to die because it's already dead. It has no life of its own. It only reflects your own life. It's like a mirror. Okay, so emptied completely of even your feeling of self. Suddenly in that emptiness, you feel the being for the first time. That being is eternal. So when Patanjali says the sources of the five afflictions, the kleshas, can be abolished by resolving them back towards their origin, you go into that feeling of fearlessness, of emptiness. Prati-prasava, this he says, is a very significant process because it's a process of reabsorbing back into the causal source. So bringing effect back to the cause is the process of involution. And he says, you must have heard the name of Janov, the man who rediscovered primal therapy. And primal therapy is part of prati-prasava. It's one of the oldest techniques of Patanjali. Janov teaches people to go back to their childhood. Those of you who are in therapy, who have followed any form of, have an understanding of regression, it says go back to your childhood. You can go on trying to solve the problem, but until you go back to the root, it cannot be solved. The minute you're aware of the root of it, the problem gets solved. So effects cannot be solved, only causes can be solved. That's a very important point that he made. Barbara Stoller-Miller says the subtle forces of corruption can be escaped by reversing their cause. Patanjali now calls on Sankhya philosophy to explain how evolution is the transformation of primary, undifferentiated material nature, which is Prakriti, into the constituents of existence, such as egoism, mind, reason, the senses, subtle and gross elements. Reversing the course of the subtle forces of corruption is a kind of involution, the opposite of the evolutionary process. So simply put, Sutra 10 is talking about how we need to return to the source, move from the gross into the subtle to uproot the afflictions. Thank you so much for listening. In the future sutras, he's going to be explaining how exactly we achieve this process. Thank you so much.